Hi, I'm Mari, your friendly neighborhood explainer of catastrophic hypotheticals and bad ideas humanity is just curious enough to consider. And today we're going deep. Like, deepest part of the ocean deep. Buckle up because we're asking one of the most wildly irresponsible, scientifically terrifying, and strangely tempting questions ever. What if we nuked the Mariana Trench? Now, before we go further, let's clarify. This is not a recommendation. I'm not saying you should detonate a nuclear bomb at the bottom of the ocean, but let's say, in the name of science and hypothetical chaos, someone did. Specifically, someone dropped a nuclear device, say on the scale of the Tsar Bomba, right into the Challenger Deep, the deepest known point of the Mariana Trench, about 11 kilometers down. So, what happens? First off, let's talk pressure. Down at those crushing depths, the water above exerts over 1,000 times the pressure of the atmosphere at sea level. That's like stacking an elephant on every square inch of your body. If you or I were down there, we'd be flattened into a very sad, very short pancake instantly. But what about a nuclear bomb? Surprisingly, nukes don't care much about pressure, at least not before detonation. The casing can be reinforced, and submarines have already tested smaller devices underwater during the Cold War. So let's assume this one makes it all the way down without malfunctioning. And then, someone presses the big red button. Boom. Except, it wouldn't look like the typical mushroom cloud from movies. No fireball punching into the sky. No camera-shaking shockwave. Instead, it would be a massive, violent underwater explosion, a superheated bubble of gas and plasma expanding outward into crushing blackness. At sea level, a nuclear bomb releases energy primarily through heat, light, and shockwaves in the air. Underwater, that energy behaves differently. Water is much denser than air, which means the explosion's shockwave would be far more concentrated and travel faster and farther. The heat would instantly vaporize millions of gallons of water, but the pressure would also crush that expanding bubble just as fast. What you'd get is something called a sloshing cavitation bubble. Imagine a balloon of superheated gas expanding and collapsing again and again, violently rebounding under pressure. This bubble would slam into itself with tremendous force, creating secondary shockwaves that could go on for several seconds. It's violent, chaotic, and incredibly unstable. Would we see anything on the surface? Depends on the size of the bomb, but likely, yes. A large enough explosion might trigger a massive underwater shockwave that would eventually reach the surface and form a dome of rising water, followed by a small tsunami. Not wipe out the coastline levels, but definitely confuse the fish and scare the local Navy levels. Now here's where things get weirder. The Mariana Trench is not just any deep hole. It sits near a subduction zone, where one tectonic plate dives beneath another. That means it's already a highly active seismic area. So the next question is, would nuking it trigger an earthquake or a volcanic eruption? The short answer? Probably not, but maybe. A single nuke doesn't have enough energy to shift massive tectonic plates. Earthquakes release energy on the scale of hundreds to thousands of nuclear bombs. That said, if the rock in the area was already unstable, a nuke could potentially act as a catalyst. Not cause the earthquake exactly, but give it a little nudge. Now imagine the political fallout. And not just the radiation kind. The ocean is not a trash bin for nuclear experiments. Radioactive material underwater spreads differently than in the air. While most of the fallout would stay local to the blast zone, especially because of the water pressure keeping radioactive particles contained, some would rise through the ocean column. Deep sea currents could carry trace contaminants into the marine food chain. And remember, the trench is home to some of the most mysterious life forms on Earth, many of which we've never even discovered. Nuking their habitat would be like firebombing the last untouched library of alien life. And then there's the symbolism. The Mariana Trench represents the furthest reach of Earth's natural mystery, the place we still whisper about. Bombing it would be like setting fire to the Mona Lisa to see what the ashes look like. A nuclear detonation down there might not break the planet, but it would tell the universe exactly what kind of species we are. Now, there is one last twist. Some science fiction writers and a few bored physicists have speculated that if you detonated a powerful enough bomb deep enough in the right conditions, you might destabilize pockets of methane clathrate, or even tap into supercritical water layers. In theory, this could lead to a massive gas release or secondary explosions, like underwater chain reactions. While unlikely, it adds an extra flavor of maybe don't to this already insane idea. So, in the end, what would happen if we nuked the Mariana Trench? You'd create a massive underwater shockwave, possibly trigger a localized tsunami, potentially harm a lot of deep-sea life, stir up some radioactive sump, and make every international treaty in existence very, very angry. You wouldn't crack the earth open or summon Godzilla, but you'd definitely break something. Maybe not geologically, but ethically. Anyway, I'm Mari, and if you're ever holding a nuclear warhead over the deepest place on Earth and thinking, should I drop this? The answer is no. Always no. Read a book instead, maybe something about ocean science, and leave the trench alone. It's doing its best.